everybody thinks they need to focus on, here's what we do. Here's, we're going to convince the customer that we're different in this way. And the reality is the people who do the best are the ones that create the emotional bonds with their customers.
Hey, welcome to 10X Your Team with Cam and Otis. We're a father-son leadership podcast where we talk with other lifelong learners about making an impact and solving big problems. And, Camden, it didn't happen this morning. Folks, we have a lighting problem this time of year in the Tribe and Purpose altitude studio where the sun likes to come in. And
if you're the altitude studio, what am I?
Desert.
All right. I thought you'd have something more fun than that, but I guess it makes sense.
Well, I had to come up with altitude really quick. If you're going to ask me to come up with two things really quick, I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But the environment likes to sucker me in with it's cloudy until Camden hits record, and then the sun bursts out. But you know what? We might actually get some rain today. I'm pretty.
Hey, look at that. Send some down to the desert when you get a chance.
We're keeping all of it. We're going to put the dam on the Colorado River is what we're going to do. Y'all can go find your
California jacks all that stuff anyway. I don't get none of it.
No, the water from Mexico, they owe you 60 million gallons or something like that.
Yes, sir. Go back and check out an old episode, folks. We covered that in detail.
Yeah. I think that might actually be to Texas. Our guest, Craig, joining us from Texas, the great state of. Are you getting your water from Mexico? They pay up that bill yet? Do you know?
No, we believe it or not, our water comes from the Colorado River, but it's probably not the Colorado River you're thinking of. So there's another Colorado River that starts in Colorado. I've been there, and is it South Point? I think it's South Point where it went through, but yeah, no, it's real dry here. And the big contention in Austin is we send a lot of the water that we'd like to have here. We send it downstream to the rice farmers in the Houston area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like we can make fun of H-Town all day long. We do a whole damn show making fun of H-Town and all the decisions they made with flooding and not flooding and flooding where it ain't supposed to be. Oh my goodness, yeah. But there's another water show for us, Camden. We'll have to put that.
There you go. I don't know anything on the other side of the continental divide. I'm good on the west.
No.
As you asked where he gets his water, I was like, I don't know where the hell Texas gets his water. That wasn't on my map. We were just over here.
Yeah. Well, after you got your water and your lawn is watered, what the heck brought you into the marketing space? I mean, I don't always ask this, but I'm also in that. What the hell were you thinking?
Well, so when I was in the Marines, I decided I was going to go to engineering school because I like being creative. I wanted to go create things. And I thought, who creates things but engineers? And I go off, I get 2 engineering degrees and discover kind of late to the party that that's not a field where they reward creativity.
No, there's a process, dude.
And so I did well. I mean, I did good work. I got promotions. All that, but I just wasn't happy, and so I moved over.
You were being a good Marine engineer is what you were doing. You were doing what you were told and doing it better than they expected, right?
Yeah. I think we talked about a time. I think I told you a story about how when I was in the Philippines, I think the gunny or staff sergeant told a supply officer, you're no officer of Marines. And he went and cried to the sergeant major, and the sergeant major said, "You're right." Well, a little bit of that attitude kind of slipped into me, and I was difficult to manage. And but they still liked me and what have you. But I was like, let me try marketing. And so I marketed semiconductors for mobile phones for about a decade. And
Sounds thrilling.
It was a lot of fun. Because one, in that business, 95% of mobile phone production is done by the top 5 manufacturers.
Mm-hmm.
And I can guarantee you they are tough customers. And and not just them, but when I would go over to Asia, like especially in Taiwan or China, you'd walk into a meeting thinking the meeting's about one thing, and partway through the meeting, you discovered it was about something else. And it was cool. It was fun. It was very dynamic. It was challenging. And that's where I first started working on how do I get people to buy our product for reasons beyond just it being our product. And it's a weakness of that industry in particular. But even now that I'm helping other companies do their marketing, everybody thinks they need to focus on here's what we do. Here's, we're going to convince the customer that we're different in this way. And the reality is the people who do the best are the ones that create the emotional bonds with their customers. And they get more of the business. And I mean, you can look at it time and time again. It's not always the best wins. It's whoever's created that emotional bond. And nobody did that better than Apple.
I'm just going to ask this, and Dad, you kind of asked this, is just another rephrasing of your first question. What is your thing, Craig, as you would describe it? Because as I was trying to map out, you're talking engineer, I'm thinking, okay, building things. There's some creativity with that. Building and marketing, it's not the same. You don't get to see the building. It's not physical, but you're still building something. Now you're talking people. What is the string that you see that kind of connects all these?
Yeah, so if we think about, when I was in engineering school, took some software classes, had to learn how to program. It's impossible to graduate engineering school without knowing how to program a computer. It's impossible to do marketing without knowing how to program the mind. And so we have 2 parts of our brain. You've heard left brain, right brain. Mm-hmm. That's been debunked. That's if you hear somebody talking about that, they're close but not exactly accurate. If you turn the brain 90 degrees, you have what's called system 1. The back of your brain, your fast brain, makes 95% of your decisions. The front brain, your frontal cortex, makes 5% of your decisions, but it's the only part of the brain that can explain why. The problem is it's the only part of the brain that can answer the question, why? Why did you do this? The problem is 95% of the time it wasn't involved in the decision. And so when you ask that part of the brain, why did you do this? Or what's your opinion about this? Then the brain actually just makes up crap and the person doesn't know it. That's why companies like Coca-Cola blew $30 million in 1984 launching New Coke. They went out and asked people, hey, what's your favorite drink? And their sample size was massive. They polled 200,000 people, and 200,000 people led them to make a $30 million mistake. So once you understand that, as a marketer, my job is to program people's system 1 thinking, to get in there for that 95% of decisions. And one of my mentors who does talk about left brain, right brain, but I'm not going to criticize him because the guy's a genius. But the way he puts it is win the heart and the mind will follow. Once you win the heart, once you get that programming in the 95% of the brain, the rest of the brain, your frontal cortex, will make up the reasons to defend the choice. Mm-hmm. And so that would be the thread. It's, it used to be when I was a design engineer, I designed cell phones so people could communicate. And you just follow a certain set of rules to get a predictable outcome. Well, guess what? It seems random when you're dealing with people, but there are a set of rules that when you follow them, you can get predictable outcomes.
We were talking in the green room a bit about pattern interrupts and those kind of things. To use my term on it, I'm not right brain, left brain. I get mine more from Richard Thaler talks about the reflective and the automatic system. Same kind of thing. The first is the automatic, and then we rarely use that reflective. And one of the things he talks about in the what he calls like choice architecture is this idea of like trying to game the system in a way where it tricks into using that reflective system, so that they're actually thinking they can make better choices. You know, the whole idea basically being that we don't make that bad of choices, but it's rare that we really make a choice. It's more so that we just brush things off. Could you talk some in marketing about how to play into that more reflective system? You know, the second system you talked about, the frontal lobe, and using that pattern interrupt in a way to really get people to think critically in a good way like that.
Well, yeah. So there's a couple things. There's two answers I'd have to that. One is it's really hard to get people to stop and slow down, think through things. I'll give you an example where in my own life, where facts and data were not persuasive despite the overwhelming presence of facts and data. So part of the way I'm going to answer your question is when we're programming somebody's system one thinking to make a very rapid decision, we're laying out what we call breadcrumbs so that when they have to defend that choice to someone else, they latch onto these breadcrumbs. These breadcrumbs are just red herring. But when they go and tell somebody, this is why I made the choice, they're just latching onto something that we put out there as something for their brain to grab hold of to defend, this is why I made this choice. But it's complete crap. It's not why they made the choice. Mm-hmm. So there's that part. The other part, in terms of interrupting the process, that's hard. It's really, really hard. And I would say that you have to use it selectively, because if you make them think too much, they're just going to go away and they're not going to purchase. But we use something we call priming questions that are not questions designed to gather information. They're questions that are designed to shift their mindset. And so the traits of a priming question is, one, you're 95% certain they won't know the answer to it when you ask them. Mm-hmm. The second is you're 95% certain they will realize they should know the answer, but don't. And then the third thing is it's got to be a perfectly reasonable question for you to ask. You know, it can't be one of these stupid sales questions. We were talking about a major training organization. I see it, and when I see somebody's sales script, it's so predictable. Well, if you continue on your current path, what will be the outcome? And you know, anybody that has two licks of sense, anybody that's smart enough to be a good customer for you, is going to look at that and say, "Oh, dude, you're just trying to, herd me into the canyon, kind of like a rancher driving cattle, and I don't like it. You're stealing my autonomy." And people don't like when their autonomy is taken. They tend to react and do things that you'd rather they not do.
You know what? You just brought up something I think is I think you're the right guy to ask this question, because the more sales training that I get, the more I recognize the sell to me.
Including the amazing sales training you got yesterday from your employee, Camden.
Yes,
right?
Yes, including that.
Making sure I get my points. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah, you get 2.3 points for that one. But I saw something about the speaking thing, and I was like, oh, that sounds kind of cool. Get on the stage and stuff like that. And so I signed up to do a call, and man, she was good. She wasn't reading from the script, but it was a script. And I was like, I don't want to waste my time anymore. And I ain't going to waste yours because I ain't buying.
Yeah.
But it was just one of those, this category of discussion, this category of discussion, this category of discussion. How do you, as a marketer, salesman, because what you do, you have to do both. Overcome that, the guy like Otis going, shit, Here's the tick 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 tick.
It's that whole damn. I read the same book. I know what I know what's next.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you have to be more thoughtful in your questions. And again, it has to be a question that's reasonable for you to ask. Somebody would expect you to ask. As a matter of fact, if you didn't ask it, they may not realize the question on the front end, but afterwards they'd think, oh yeah, he had to ask that. And so, when somebody gets on the phone with me, I make two assumptions. The first assumption is they have a revenue problem. Because guess what? Nobody gets on a sales call with a marketing guy unless they have a revenue problem.
Yeah. Why would they bother? Right.
Right. Yeah. And the second question, or the second assumption I make, is that anybody on the phone has had a bad marketing experience in their background. And so I'll give you an example of a priming question, one of the priming questions I ask. And it does have utility. It's an important question to answer, but it slows them down. Most people don't know the answer to it. When I ask them, they realize they should know the answer to it and start shifting the way they think about marketing. So most people think, hey, I just have this chunk of money. I'm going to spend it on marketing. And that's the wrong way to think. So the question I ask them is, what's the lifetime value, or technically customer lifetime value of a customer? And nobody knows the answer to that. And they kind of squirm a little bit. And I'm like, well, hey, let's kind of calculate this here live. And I start going through it, and we come up with some estimate, and it could be a rough estimate. And then the next question I ask them is, okay, and I'll give you an example. I had somebody, when I asked him that question, he didn't know, and he sat down, he started thinking about it, and he said, I think the lifetime value of a customer is $4, maybe $5 million to me. And so I say, okay, if lifetime value of a new customer for you is $4 or $5 million, how much of that $4 or $5 million would you be willing to spend to acquire a new customer? Mm-hmm. Now, there's a few things I'm accomplishing there. One is, if you're not thinking about customer acquisition or client acquisition as a percentage of their value, you're not thinking about marketing correctly. Because the number has to be very, very specific to you. And in this guy's case, he's like, I'd be willing to spend $1 million to acquire a new client. I'm like, okay. I said, we can drive a bus through that. That's easy.
You're like, yes.
If he had come back and said, $100, which I've gotten that answer, $500 or something like that, I just tell him, I said, I don't think we can solve this for you. So the reason that's reasonable is it tells me, and this is a point in my sales conversation, depending upon how they answer this question, or if they refuse to answer this question, we just very politely end the call. And if they refuse to answer it, and just say, look, I can't figure out if I can help you until I understand this number. And so why don't you take some time, think about it, and reach back out. They never do. But most people realize, oh, you know what? I've been thinking about marketing costs in the wrong bucket. Mm-hmm. And this is really how I should be thinking about it. And here's something that magical that happens. Everybody spends a lot of time trying to say, I'm different. Here's why. Mm-hmm. If you want somebody to believe something about you, ask them a question like that. And it immediately communicates in their brain, connects all the little neurons. Oh, this is how Craig solves problems. This is how Otis solves problems. This is how Cam solves problems. And if it's meaningful, if it's new, if it helps them realize that they've been doing it wrong, you are now the sole source supplier that can help them solve their problem.
I love the way of putting that. And you help them almost, because the whole sales thing is about, finding their problem, their pain points and all that sort of stuff. But when you can help that future client discover a problem or redefine a problem set, probably a better way of putting it, because in the broader sense, in a completely new way and enlighten them to that, yeah, that's then you're like you are the expert. You're not the, oh yeah, we've done that for other people. That's I think you've changed the narrative in that, haven't you?
Yeah. And you don't have to toot your own horn. All you have to do is ask questions that make them realize the type of person that asks these types of questions is the type of person that solves problems this way. It works magically. But let me share a story. I mentioned, the old hitting people with facts and data. So I have an example where this was clearly my wife was trying to persuade me with facts and data, and it wasn't working. And
he hasn't gone through your sales training. Is that what you're saying?
Well, she was a quick study. Because she avoided the very next argument shrewdly. So I'll share both with you. So this conversation happened like last week of September 2021, first week of October. And I look at her and I say, I want to leave. And completing the missing things, I want to leave the hospital. And she said, Craig, you can't walk. It's like, that's not true. I can too walk. She's like, no, you can't. Look at you. You can't lift your arms or legs. And you got this big tube coming out of your throat that's tethered to a machine next to the bed. You can't leave. You can't walk. I said, that's not true. I've been up 4 or 5 times already. I believe that. I mean, we're sitting there going back and forth. All the evidence was in her favor. I mean, I couldn't sit up in bed on my own. I couldn't lift my arms or legs. I wasn't even strong enough to press the call button to call the nurse in. And sure enough, there was a big tube coming out of my throat, tethered to a machine next to the bed that helped me breathe. And but at the end of that argument, I was 100% convinced she was wrong. She was 100% convinced I was wrong. Facts and data don't matter when we're in that mindset. Mm-hmm. And we keep falling into the trap where we're like, Cam doesn't get it. He just needs more facts. So let me load him up with all these facts. And once he realizes how wrong he is, he'll make a different choice. Mm-hmm. Well, if she couldn't persuade me in that setting that I couldn't walk, chances are you don't have enough facts to make the argument. So that leads to it was like a day or two later where I said, I want my phone. Now, when I'm saying these things, I had a trach, so I couldn't talk. So I was like whispering. And I was like, I want my phone so I can text people. And she knew immediately I didn't know how to use my phone. Yeah, because guess what? I was in a 6-week coma and your brain's all cloudy when you're waking up. And instead of arguing with me, she's like, sure. She pulls the phone out of her purse, puts it in my hands. And I have a picture of me just staring at the phone. I stared at that phone for 5 minutes. I had no idea how to unlock it. It's my phone. I had no idea how to unlock it. And after 5 minutes, I just kind of motioned to her and she takes it back. I was 100% persuaded. She didn't have to argue. Her best argument was, sure, let me help you accomplish your goal. Here's the first step.
Yeah.
With talk about the facts and the data there, one of the things that comes to mind for me, and you kind of touched on this a little bit with your example of talking about the lifetime value of a customer, those aspects there, that sometimes people aren't really, they either don't know the information or don't want to share it with you, might not have built that rapport with them yet, those kind of things there. What I think is really interesting with that is those pieces of sensitive information, they are critical a lot of times to the discovery process. Same kind of thing in leadership. If we go on a sales call with somebody and I start talking to them and I start poking out that they're a crappy leader, that's very sensitive. They're going to shut down. It's this weird little dance where it's like you need to point out the pain to make sure they're aware of it. But at the same time, if you go, dude, you suck, they're going to completely shut down, right? Doesn't matter all the facts and the data I'm pouring out about how much they suck. It's like you can't cross that threshold at that point. What are your thoughts, Craig, on trying to balance that like discovery process without, poking them in the chest too hard?
Yeah, at high level, shaming them. Shame is never an effective sales tactic. I mean, it's tried. Usually, it's the people that do that are wearing polyester suits and fat ties. But
Or life. Ooh, made me think of life insurance, folks. You're really just going to leave. You're just going to leave them. You're going to do that. You're going to.
yeah, there's something I talk a lot about is autonomy. If you take away somebody's autonomy, their ability to choose, your closing rate's going to go down. And part of that is their dignity. I would say dignity is a separate category, but by preserving their autonomy, you're preserving their dignity. And so I would say, and I wish this was my idea, but somebody told me, they said, you wouldn't be like the doctor. When you go visit the doctor, hopefully not one of the doctors that nearly killed me, but you wouldn't be like when you go to see the doctor's going to start asking you some questions. And when you're asking those questions, when we're queuing up our questions, we're not diving in and, asking them drop their shorts and bend over, at the first question. We're starting by understanding them and understanding what's going on. And I'll tell you, there are few things in this world that are more seductive than the feeling of being understood. Mm-hmm. And when somebody feels understood and they feel like you're being careful with that information, then they open up. I mean, and you'd be shocked some of the things people tell me. But it always starts by just asking some reasonable questions, but it's really key to get them talking and make sure they feel heard and understood. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, eventually you get to a point, and I'll get some pushback. I've had some people like, they didn't want to answer my lifetime value question. And I'll just tell them, I'll say, look, because usually they're afraid that I'm trying to price out what I'm going to charge them. Mm-hmm. And in full honesty, there's an element there where I want them to think again about what a new client's worth to them and what they'd be willing to pay, so that whenever they see our fees, they don't pass out and, go into shock. But I'll tell them, I'll say, look, I'm not asking this to base our fees or what our fees are. This is not about that. I need to figure out if this is a problem we can solve. And I don't know if we can solve this until I know this number.
So that actually builds into what I wanted to ask about that, because we were talking Dad, you asked about what my vocab word for it is market maturity, right? That they've read the book, therefore it's like you can't use the book on them type of thing, right? With that, Craig, do you think there's a level where, because they have that level of market maturity, they understand what's going on there, that it helps to level with it? If it's like, hey, I'm asking you this question, they go, ooh, he's trying to figure out what he can price me on, he's trying to figure out the budget, all those kind of things. Then you go, oh, no, I got a formula up here on the wall, and that's one of my variables. And if I can understand that, then I can know if I can help you or not. And leveling on that level, do you see that having an impact there? Of it's like they already know what they think they're getting tricked into. So it's more of a just, hey, no, pull back the curtain. Here's what I'm really doing. And kind of leveling with them on that. Do you think that's an effective strategy for that more mature audience?
It works on those who it works. It doesn't work on those who it doesn't work. And so...
this is why I hate marketing.
Well, no. So you guys are coaching in leadership, right? And every leader's had some problem employee at some point. And the question you have to ask, there are proven methods of reforming an employee to get them up to performing at their level. And so it works on some people and it doesn't work on others. Some horses, I'm not a horse guy, but some horses will take the bit, some horses won't. And if the horse won't take the bit, there's not much you can do for him. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah. When I was picking up their shit, that's what everyone told me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. I have, my mentor has a term for certain type of people. He calls them twitchy little bastards. And for him, that means people that want to try something for 1 month and have immediate magical results and then shut it off. And he's like, they're a twitchy little bastard. And he's like, I can't help them. And if somebody's coming to me and they've been burned by too many marketers and that's encumbering them from being able to honestly answer that, once I tell them, here's why I'm asking, I don't know if I can solve your problem until I know this. And if they just can't get over that because they've been burned then too many times, then you're dealing with some emotional baggage, or at least here's my take. Let this be somebody else's crazy girlfriend. I don't need another crazy girlfriend in my life.
Yeah.
I want to tweak the subject a little bit because something that always pops into my mind, especially when we talk in the larger sense of marketing, is the branding versus the lead generation. And what's your perspective on that? I mean, are they separate? Do they converge? What's going on?
I had this conversation yesterday with somebody. I was trying to avoid using the word branding. I was having it with Donnie, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I was having it with Donnie. And, Donnie's a little bit of a tough customer. You have a short fuse to make your point with him. Yep. And I hate using the word branding because people don't understand what it means. They think it's about fonts, colors, and logos. And it's not. The fonts, colors, and logos just remind you of the brand. For me, branding is about emotional connection. The emotions it makes you feel when you see that font, colors, or logo. If you look at Walmart's logo versus Target's logo, these things aren't works of art. These are just real basic logos.
Yeah.
But if you're like me and you see the Walmart logo, you get one feeling, and it doesn't feel good. You look at the Target logo, you get a different feeling, and it feels better. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of coming into that system one, that 95% that's driving the decisions. So the lead generation is a direct response activity. Most marketers focus exclusively on direct response. And because it feels good. Hey, I ran this ad, I got these leads, you got paid, you get put money in the bank, it feels good. But it's not sustainable. Then you have the branding folks come around, they're like, oh, we need to have our brand out there. And you ask them, well, what is your brand? Oh, it's, this little fluffy puppy or, some crap like that. And all they want to do is run branding ads and do little brand recognition surveys and all that kind of crap. And the reality is you have to have, what I found is you have to have the branding ads that are making the emotional connections. If you're not making emotional connections, you're going to look like everybody else, because guess what? Most of us work in crowded fields. Most of us have thousands of competitors that look substantially similar to us. And when you walk into Walmart or you walk into Target, the products on the shelves are substantially the same.
Yep. And
so you need the reason for them to choose you, just like I'm more inclined to walk into a Target than I am to walk into a Walmart. And so the way I look at branding, we rip off from Hollywood. There's a formula they use when they make TV shows and movies that create these emotional bonds. And there's no better example than Breaking Bad. Breaking Bad, the writers of Breaking Bad made you feel connected to a homicidal drug dealer. And
Yep.
Yeah. He's a great guy.
he's
We're going to hang out.
and I've watched the series a couple times, and I watch it again because I admire what the writers did, and I feel like every season they like roll the dice and say, okay, depending upon how the dice roll, we're going to make you feel good about this person that you felt bad about last season. We're going to get you to hate this person that you loved last season, and they just would sit there and do it. But there's a formula. There's a very simple formula, simple being different than easy, but it's a simple formula that they use. And guess what? We rip them off. We use their tools when we're working on branding. And here's the one thing most companies neglect. If you need to build trust to close a sale, an essential ingredient in building trust is the revelation of a weakness, vulnerability, or flaw. And if you don't do that, people won't trust you. And so my biggest challenge when I'm taking on a new client, and I've gotten to the point where I just tell them before they sign the contract, I was like, just so you know, I'm going to approach you at some point and ask you to put something on your website, and you're going to think I lost my mind. It's going to scare the crap out of you, and it's going to make you uncomfortable, but I promise it will make you money. And as an example of that, and this was before I figured out that I need to tell them before they sign the contract.
Good lesson. Good lesson.
Very good lesson. I had a RIA, financial advisory firm, as a client. And I found out one day somebody was just telling war stories about their chief investment officer. And they're like, oh, yeah. John used to be this big gambler. He'd spend all of his weekends in Vegas. And I was like, oh, really? And I'm just sitting there thinking, I just struck gold. And so the next week I went back for the meeting and I said, hey, would you mind if we change your About Us page? And they're like, oh, yeah, sure. Because they've been very happy with our work. They're like, yeah, go for it. I said, well, I actually already wrote a draft, and I slid it across the table and they read it. They were very, very kind. They said, Craig, this is really well written. We really like this. There's one thing we'd like you to take out. And they're like, can you take out this bit about him gambling? And so I had one paragraph that was only 2 sentences, and I worked the word gambling twice into this 2-sentence paragraph because I wanted to make sure nobody missed it.
Yeah.
And I told them, I said, I could do that, but if I do that, I'll remove the biggest trust building element of the story. And they said, Craig, we don't think you understand our clients. I said, I promise I do. And we're going back and forth. And fortunately, there's this young lady there named Talia. And Talia said, Craig, do you have a way of testing it? And I kind of paused and I thought about it. And, and I was familiar with Coca-Cola's failed experiment with New Coke, where 200,000 people led them to the wrong answer. And I was also familiar about how the Apple's 1984 commercial had flunked the focus group. Mm-hmm. Focus group flunked that big time. But I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I do have a way of testing this. And so I put together the test and then I invited them over to watch the results. We had recorded the results and it was overwhelming. It was absolutely overwhelming. And in a year and a half that we worked with them, we took them from 18 million to 60 million. We tripled their revenue in 18 months by substantial, by tens of millions of dollars. And what that does, the reason you have to reveal a weakness, vulnerability, or flaw is it humanizes them. Mm-hmm. We all see our own flaws and we hope others don't see them. And when we see other people that have flaws but are able to work through those, it gives us comfort. It makes them feel relatable, even if we don't share the same flaw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's huge. I'm thinking of a bunch of clients I've talked with before, and it's like, yeah, when you level up, it's like, hey, by the way, this system I'm teaching you, I use it because I struggle with these same things you're talking about, and that's how I know it works. That's when you get the most buy-in from those folks, is really going through that process. What's your thoughts, Craig, on trying to find the right angle there? And I'll use an example, take our tribe and purpose coaching. But what I was alluding to with some of my clients is, there's a lot of mental health stuff we'll talk about. Like, hey, by the way, I struggle a lot with anxiety and depression ever since I hurt my back, those kind of things. I could tell that story. People connect with it really well. If I just go, I have a bad back, that doesn't hit. That doesn't hit at all. Like, it's part of the story. It's the same story, but it doesn't connect in the same way. What's your thoughts, Craig, on how to find that way to connect with the client?
So the first thing is it has to be true and authentic to them, and and that's hard for me because most people hide their flaws, and so it takes me some time to kind of dig in and find it. But once I find it, the way you reveal it has to be in the form of storytelling. It has to be in the form of storytelling because, going back to that system one thinking, remember I said, I used to program computers. Now I program minds. The way the program works is if you want to shift a deeply held belief that's locked into their system one thinking that makes 95% of their decisions, the only mechanism I found that will change that is a dramatic story where they feel connected to the people in the story. And so when we're telling this, our About Us pages are like 800 to 1,000 words long. And everybody tells me, Craig, nobody will read that these days. People have short attention spans. And I'm like, what's the number one podcast in the world? Oh, Joe Rogan, 3 hours long. Okay, got it.
For short attention span, right?
Yeah, if they'll pay attention, if it's good, huh?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, now what I would say is every 8 seconds, when I'm writing, every 8 seconds, I'm renewing my lease on their attention. But we go in, we tell a story. The most powerful stories, again, we rip off Hollywood. Everything we do, we're ripping off some version of Hollywood. And a principle in Hollywood is show, don't tell. So if you think about some movies that you found really powerful, you don't have the actor saying, "Oh, I feel nervous. Oh, I am nervous." No, you're sitting there watching them sweat. Their eyes are kind of twitching around, and they're doing all these things. Well, that's how you should write. You should show, don't tell. Show somebody the emotions. In one of the About Us stories that we wrote, and I'm going a little bit from memory. It says, Dad came home from work one day and started talking. His face was strained. Mom started crying. And soon it became clear that life was yet again adrift. Do you feel the power of that?
Oh yeah. I'm like, damn, man, that sucks. I've been there, man. I'm relating to it. Yeah, that's a great way of showing it. Wow.
And the thing is, what was going on? The client didn't want me telling people that this is what happened because it was really embarrassing, more than just embarrassing. It was something I agreed with him. It wasn't something that we wanted to make public, and so it doesn't really matter what Dad was talking about. We know what happened. We know we've been in those conversations. We've seen those conversations. And those are the things, and your brain starts connecting the dots and you start relating and you feel that affinity. This is what they did in Breaking Bad. This is where you're like, oh man, that's a tough choice. I can see why they would make that choice. And it starts bonding you to them. And so that's, you can't say, yeah, I struggle with back issues. You describe the situation, laying on the floor, twitching and wanting to scream, and felt like it would never end. And life felt, it's just like, is tomorrow going to be like this also?
Yeah, that's where my mind, because I have not. Sorry, America. I have not watched Breaking Bad. I've watched like one or two of the early episodes. So I have an understanding.
I'm with you there, Dad. I wasn't sure if we were going to lie our way through this episode or not.
Yeah.
I know my wife and I were the annoying people where it's if we hear about a show too much, we won't go watch it.
No, what I'm thinking, what's flashing in my head is a more recent one that is whatever season it is, White Lotus, and the dad, the financial advisor dad who's going through all this crap.
Never says a damn thing about it. It's all right here.
Yeah, and it's like, damn, because you feel that relation, you're pulled into it, and it's like, wow, yeah. So how do you? It can't be just in the about page. How do you help that client get that out there
without them telling the sob story constantly? Because I think that's another pitfall there of it. It's it becomes the whole identity rather than a piece of the story.
No, and when you look at the About Us page, it's not a continuous sob story. It's a story of victory and overcoming. And
the hero's journey, right?
Yeah, it's a hero's journey.
Okay.
And I'll tell you, the book that I read is Stealing Fire from the Gods. It's a book written by a screenwriter about how to write screenplays. And the formula I use for that comes straight out of that book. But what that does is a lot of your branding elements end up being set on that page. This is where you're really establishing, the boundaries of the brand. Okay, so let's talk about lead gen. It's a direct response activity. So we'll start running lead gen ads. We don't do mass media. The mentor I was mentioning, he's a mass media guy. He runs radio and TV. Our clients have much narrower audiences where mass media is inappropriate. And so we'll run a direct response campaign to generate leads. But while we're doing that, we're building what's called a retargeting audience. And that is anybody that interacts with the ad or the website gets added to an audience, and we run ads to that audience. This is where we run the branding ads. So let me give an example. There's we have a client that does offshore software development. Thousands upon thousands of Indians do this. They all look the same. They all make the same promise. Hey, we make your software cheap in India. And so you can't differentiate, well, we're better because, we're cheaper, which is always bad, it's there's no differentiation. Well, for these guys, the co-founder of the company is ethnically Indian, but he grew up in Dallas. And there's a little bit of a challenge with that because he's always out of place. And so his About Us page opens up saying, a foreign bird with a local walk is an Indian phrase for somebody who is out of place and has learned to adapt. Some use that phrase to describe me. My skin is dark and my name is a Syriac Malayan name that is common in South India. But I grew up in Dallas. Whether I'm walking in India or in Dallas, I am a foreign bird trying to find my local walk when everything else is out of place. So, and Cam, I'm watching you and I just saw emotionally, you kind of like hurt for that guy. Now, the rest of the story is moving on to success. So then we run the branding ad. The branding ad, one of them, so there's a campaign we're running called Not an American Genius. And so the first one in the series that we ran had a picture of Einstein. And it talks about how Einstein was born in Ulm, a city that was split between two states, 1 foot in Württemberg, 1 foot in Bayern. His life began out of place. His life was thrown further out of place when a new chancellor didn't like his name or religion. So Einstein moved to America because America welcomes out-of-place dreamers and who are here to change the world. I'm skipping a few lines. And then the ad kind of closes out. Mava Partners is a team of people with the wrong name and the wrong religion and exceptional talents. We're not Einsteins, but we know our place. And that place is fueling the genius of American entrepreneurs with the right talents so they can change the world. Notice we didn't say anything about what they do. There's no call to action. But we have strangers coming to their website, filling out their contact us form saying, can I talk to you about your services? And I guarantee it's not because they popped up in the Google search results in that crazy space. It's because they interacted with the brand and we made an emotional connection. And all of a sudden they look different than all the other thousands of Indians that are promising to do software cheap.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I get emails from probably 3 or 4 times a week about building some app or something like that.
We get an SEO comment every day on our YouTube page.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's like, I can feel the emotions in that, which really leads to what I learned, because what I learned, I love this phrase, and I'm Camden, you need to make sure you write it down also, because it's the seduction of being understood. Yeah, thank you for the dramatic click of the pen. Yes, folks, that's what that noise was. And he held it. If you're in your pickup truck driving, go to the YouTube when you get home.
I play to the video audience. I don't play to the audio folks. Sorry, guys.
But seriously, back to what I learned. I mean, the seduction of being understood, because that's so true. It's like, oh, he gets me. You know, I think there's probably some rom-com somewhere where some chick says that in the rom-com, and it's probably Matthew McConaughey, your neighbor, playing the hero, and she goes, he gets me, right? I mean, and that's the seduction. So, man. Camden, how about you? Who'd have thought we'd have a rom-com reference on this podcast? Camden, how about you? What'd you learn?
I'm laughing because it wasn't that long ago. I think I had a whole bit about a Devil Wears Prada as a reference on the show. So we won't say it's a first, but no, for me, it's a simple thing, but show, don't tell in marketing stories. I'm looking back and I want to go through our website now and check a bunch of things out, but it's like the idea of it's like, no, just show what you're doing and let them fill in the blanks. I think, talking about like Hollywood and, storytelling, it's like, you got to give the audience credit at some point that they can connect that. If you say A, B, skip over a bunch of letters and say F, G, they're going to go, oh, okay, I know what happened there. You don't have to spell it all the way out for them. So I love that approach for the marketing.
Good deal. Craig, how about you, man? What'd you learn?
I learned that apparently these sales trainers still have legs pushing strategies that, at least in my mind, aren't the best. It makes me a little bit envious. I'm like, I got a better strategy. Why don't you come pay me those hundreds of thousands of dollars to train your team?
Yeah, well, get in line with us, because we feel the same way when you talk about some of these other systems out there that companies pay a lot of money for, and it's like you're just buying a box, and it's the same box that your competitor bought. So yeah, we're right there with you in that sense. Yeah. But we'll fix it, won't we?
Absolutely.
Through the seduction of understanding. Craig, how do folks find you, learn more about getting seduced by you, and hire you onto the team?
Well, sorry, I was going to say real quick that. So we got Craig's seduction. Send it over to Bob King. He's got the strip tease. I think we've got our whole pipeline built out now.
So you can find me on LinkedIn, very easily findable there, or you can come to my website. It's alliesforme.com. That's spelled ALLIES, the number 4, ME.com. I actually have a gift for your audience, 2 gifts, really. We haven't talked about something called first-time offers. It's a mechanism that we use to build rapid trust in the short term. And it's works really well if you have high-ticket sales, because it moves somebody from inaction to action. It kind of changes the status quo. It turns them from not a client to a client in light switch flip. And so we have a guide on how to make those, or actually how to avoid some of the many errors I made in the process of figuring these things out. And also had 23 days to a course on how to make those. The reason we limit it 23 days, not trying to be cheesy, but we study human behavior, and we know that if we give you unlimited access to this course, you're going to sign up and you will never, ever take it. And our goal is to see lives changed. And we've learned if we give you 23 days access, you're going to go in there, actually do it, and your life will be changed. We see it in the analytics. So those two things, all you have to do is go to alliesforme.com/10x. And the X is lowercase. That's important. alliesforme.com/10x. And we'll take you to a page. Just fill out the form and you'll get those gifts.
And that's from the engineer who had to learn how to code. So yes, a lowercase x, folks.
Yeah.
Craig, man, always great to chat with you and hang out. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. It's been a delight.
Camden, run us out.
All right. Thank y'all for listening to today's episode of 10X Your Team with Camden and Otis. And a special thanks to our guest, Craig Andrews, for joining us today. Remember, you can watch full episodes of the show on YouTube at 10X Your Team. If you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure to pass along to other lifelong learners in your tribe so they can enjoy it too. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. As always, that full archive of episodes is available at www.10xyourteam.net. Thanks again. We'll see you all next time.